Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
You're live.
Good morning. Welcome to the Airport Subcommittee meeting for Thursday, April 27, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Please note that quorum is present. Our first order of business today is the appointment of chair and vice chair. May I have nominations for position of chair? Councillor Wang?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Mark Tattison as a co-chair.
Sure. Any further nominations? Okay.
Is the vote up?
It's coming up. The vote is open. Councillor Beatty, I'm waiting for your vote. And Councillor perfect. That vote carries 5-0. And then a nomination for the second co-chair position. Councillor Tattison?
I think I'd like to nominate Mike Spatafor, but he's not here today, so we'll do that at a subsequent meeting.
Yep, so we'll vote to defer the consideration of the second co-chair position to the next meeting. Okay, the vote is open. And that vote carries 5-0. And Councillor Tattison, you can take over.
Thank you and welcome to the Airport Subcommittee Meeting 23-001, April 27th, 2023. Thank you to our Legislative Coordinator, Matt Gauthier. We're going to do an approval of the agenda. I guess before we do that, I think we'll acknowledge the presence of the councillors and those attending this meeting. Around the table, we have Sue Remack, General Manager Jeanette Smith.
City manager.
Oh, sorry. Oh. You know, there's a lot going on in my mind right now. Okay, City Manager, thank you. Yeah, City Manager. Okay, let's just say Jeanette Smith. Director, Norm Schlehan. Kirk Weaver, I'm sorry, I don't know your position, Kirk.
Manager budget.
Manager Budget, thank you. Ray Kessler, thank you. Delegate Horncastle is here. Kathy Puckering is here. GM Thorne is in the back there. Councillors McMeekin, Councillors Beatty, Councillor Kassar, Councillor Wang, and myself, and online.
No one.
No one online. Okay. We'll move to approval of the agenda. Mr. Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, there's no changes to the agenda. However, presentation for item 8.3 will be uploaded to the agenda following the meeting.
Okay, thank you. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor Beatty, seconded by Councillor Wang. The vote is up. That passes 5-0. Is there any discussion on the agenda?
We adjourn.
Order. Seeing none, we will require an electronic vote. Please indicate your vote now.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, that was my error on the chair's procedures. We've already voted to approve the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, we'll look to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, July 27th, 2022.
All of us are new. Yeah. All of us are new, so none of us have been at the previous meeting.
I've checked with the deputy clerk on this, and the desire would be to have someone move it who was at the previous meeting, but if there is no one who was there, then anyone can move it.
Well, let's have it moved by Councillor McMeekin, since he may have been at one in the past. And Councillor Wang will second that. Can we have a vote?
Just a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick question, Chair. Thank you. It looks like it was a very short meeting back in July. And just a question about the motion that was passed. It reads to me like it's standing instructions for staff if there's any future sublease agreements to be entered in. So is that the correct interpretation? It's just standing instructions, or was there anything specific it was addressing? Through the chair.
Through the chair, staff.
Through the chair, Ray Kessler, Chief Corporate Real Estate Officer. I'm getting an echo here, but yes, that is correct. It was a reflection of both an existing agreement that was coming forward, as well as to provide some standing delegations, if you like, for future agreements of the similar nature.
Any more questions? Thank you, Councillor Kassar. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Did we already move in second? So we're done?
It
Moving
was
to-
moved by Councillor McMeekin, seconded by Councillor Wang, and I'll open it for vote.
Okay, thank you. The vote carried 5-0. Looking at staff presentations, 8.1, Cole Horncastle, Executive Managing Director, John C. Munro, Hamilton International Airport, who's going to give us an overview and 2020 year in review.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Taddison. And don't worry, I know my name is a mouthful. You're not the first to do that. That's happened like every time, so that's definitely not a problem. So first off, congratulations to all the new councillors, new faces around the airport subcommittee here. Kathy and I have been around the airport for quite some time, and we definitely look forward to working with this new airport subcommittee for the next now 3.5 years and continuing to grow the airport. So really good opportunity for us here. So, thank you. Yes. So I was just kind of getting into the roles, and we'll get into a bit of that. But my name, Cole Horncastle. I'm the Executive Managing Director here at the John C. Munro Hamilton International Airport. My main role as Executive Managing Director is delivering on the day-to-day tasks at the airport, which includes regulatory compliance, as well as ensuring our stakeholders' needs are met on that day-to-day basis, but as well as growing our business and making sure our strategic objectives are delivered on. So really, I'm that on-site presence where if there is ever any communication needs from the city, I am the main point of contact there. I'm here with my boss, Kathy Puckering, who is the VP and head of our Canadian network at Vantage and the former president and CEO of Hamilton Airport. So with that, Kathy, I'll pass it over to yourself to introduce, and we can get into some of the slides.
Great. Well, thank you, Cole. And again, echoing his words, congratulations on everybody around the table. I've had the opportunity to work at your airport under the lease that we currently have for 24 years now. So almost back to the beginning. I started in 1999, and we started this partnership with the City of Hamilton in 1995, 1996. And I've witnessed some really amazing things, and we're not done yet. So as we transitioned in our roles, Cole and I, that happened almost 2 years ago now through COVID, and I'll get into this in a few minutes. There's a few slides that speak to Vantage Airport Group, but what we did through COVID was just provide some additional opportunities for our people, and people really is, what we are. We're in the service industry, and we're managing a municipal asset. We facilitate the movement of passengers and goods, and we do it extremely well for you at the John C. Munro Hamilton International Airport. So with the role transition that I had, our parent organization also has 3 other airports in Canada, as well as many more around the world. But what they did was wanting to tap the talents and the expertise that we have in Hamilton, not only for myself, but with our business development, and then with Cole and his operational team. is how do we just balance the opportunities, the resources, and the synergies across the network, and be able to tap that talent that we have. And it just makes Hamilton International bigger and better and stronger, and pulling into a huge talent pool when we need those resources on an ad hoc basis. And it provides a real great opportunity, succession planning, learning opportunities, and a bigger portfolio for all of the people that are in Hamilton to grow. And it's more than just Hamilton International. We are part of Canada's transportation network and system, and it just does Hamilton, the City of Hamilton, Vantage and Tradeport extremely well in having the connections into a larger organization.
Great. So we can move to the next slide. And one more, please. Thank you. Great.
Sorry, I don't have my reading glasses, so I cannot see that. So I will deflect to down here. So I'm not making eye contact with you, I apologize. So just taking you down a little bit through the history of where we are. So we had hoped, and we will do this again, to have the airport subcommittee up to the airport. We would love to host you there for a tour, show you around, and just demonstrate, you know, the airport itself, the assets, the partnerships, the movement of people and goods, and really take you back in time. So today we'll give you a quick overview and snapshot of what we've done, recognizing that the new airport subcommittee, with the exception of Councillor Pauls, is all new, and we're really excited to engage with you further in telling the great news story. In 1995-96, actually, if we go way back, the airport was started in 1944, 1945 as part of the British Commonwealth Air Plan during World War II. Over time, and in recognition of John Carr Munro, the airport was awarded in the 80s $55 million, in which it actually transformed the facility from a military wartime training base to an actual airport that was able to move passengers and goods. In 1995, 1996, we started operating the airport on behalf of the City of Hamilton under a long-term lease arrangement that actually took us to 2036. We have extended it by 2 years so far, so we now have an expiry of at the end of March 2038. Through the years and over time, part of the reasons for the success that we had as operators of the airport was Tradeport International Corporation was developed. The reason for that name was our founding father, founding president, Tony Battaglia, who recently has passed away, saw a vision for Hamilton International with moving goods, and that's the reason for the name Trade in our corporate name, Tradeport. But it was a consortium of local businessmen that came together, provided the proposal of the City of Hamilton that was the successful bid because we saw the ability to grow both cargo and passenger, and really look at how do we create economic activity and value, create jobs, increase taxation at the same time. So that agreement was signed, and we've continued to operate, manage, and invest in the airport since then with little to no risk to the City of Hamilton, and in exchange for that, there's payments that are returned to the city through a form of rent sharing and a payment in lieu of taxes. We've currently generated almost $422 million in infrastructure investments on the airport property. That translates into a significant amount of economic value and GDP to the Hamilton and greater area. But that investment also includes the partnerships that we've formed with the airline partners, with our operators, with tenants. The airport is really an ecosystem of many, many other operations that all come together to ensure the safe and secure airport operation with the movement of people and goods. Currently, right now, we're underway with having the negotiation advance to extend our lease term past 2038. It is very critical for airports to have long-term leases, so they have the ability to invest in long-term assets. They have the ability to raise financial capital and cash to actually put into those investments, and to give the partners that call Hamilton International their home the security that they need when they too are putting those long-term long-term infrastructure investments onto the ground. And what they actually do as well is all of the assets and the investment at Hamilton International does vest to the City of Hamilton. So those assets are critically important to our operators as well as to the city. So over time, and just going through from 1996 to present day today, there was a lot of successes that we want to highlight. The biggest one, or one of our bigger ones, was completing a runway extension back in 1999 to give us a 10,000-foot runway. In 2008, we started pursuing government funding money for significant infrastructure investments that hadn't happened since John Monroe's time, and we've been successful ever since, and Cole will spend more time talking about that. We also completed construction of a private partnership with the federal, provincial, and Tradeport to fund a very strategic cargo sort facility on airport property that couldn't be better timed and is fully subscribed and used. And we've all seen how the movement of goods has really transformed during COVID. Cole will speak to Hamilton's role and position in the movement of goods in Canada. It's very, very important that Hamilton be recognized as having an airport that is the largest dedicated overnight freighter cargo airport in Canada. Over the years between 2008 or up to 2008, Vantage Airport Group, who started out as a management contract in the partnership with Tradeport, slowly acquired investment interest and became sole shareholder in 2008, and that's because they saw the vision and the opportunity in Hamilton. And a lot of further development by our tenants. Through 2016 and 2019, a few other major capital investments by our partners. KF Aerospace created a facility on airport and expanded their hangar into 3 hangars. They continue to provide heavy aircraft maintenance, reconfigurations. These are an opportunity to provide higher paying jobs, engineers, and it actually provides an opportunity for why airlines want to come to Hamilton, because in addition to using the infrastructure that we have here, they have the ability to maintain those aircraft while they're here. The other huge win for Hamilton International was the DHL facility and expansion in Hamilton, and you will be able to see that facility when you do have a tour. This is a mini global hub for them, 4th after their 3 major hubs in Leipzig, Germany, Hong Kong, and Cincinnati. Hamilton follows 4th, and we are a significant part of the supply chain and the movement of goods for global DHL operations. And we haven't added a lot of information on this slide in regards to Cargojet, but just recognizing the investment that Cargojet has made in Hamilton International, Canada's largest dedicated cargo airline, calls Hamilton International their home. We are their home base, and they currently are operating 3 hangar facilities in Hamilton and are the main tenant in our common use cargo sort facility as well. So moving into the present now, I'm not going to talk about NTCF. Cole will talk about that in a little bit. Just giving you a quick highlight on the next slide, please. Vantage Airport Group. Again, 20 years they've been invested now in Tradeport and the operations at Hamilton International Airport. Who Vantage Airport Group is, they are a developer that manages airports around the world. They have definitely seen the opportunities in Hamilton starting back in 1999, and very happy to partner with them. What makes Vantage stand out for us is they are an industry leader in transforming and redeveloping airports all around the world. The most recent that you may or may not be aware of, other than Hamilton International, of course, is the recent terminal redevelopment at LaGuardia in New York. $5 billion to redevelop Terminal B, and it's now it's won awards as being one of the best airports globally in the world. Again, Vantage seeing Hamilton's potential, investing heavily here as well. Being part of the Vantage Airport Group, again, gives us the ability to tap into that. And what I do want to share with this committee that's not on this slide is currently this most senior executive in LaGuardia is Frank Scremen, who was Hamilton International's president and CEO for quite some time a few years ago, my predecessor. We actually hired him in Hamilton, taking him from Union Gas. We took a person that actually was very skilled in managing people, and he is now leading the operation for us in LaGuardia at New York. His predecessor there was Stuart Steeves. You may or may not get the opportunity to meet him. He also was based in Hamilton for quite some time, for 4 years in 2003 to 2006 as our chief financial officer, and he now actually sits on our board. So he is a board member and still very much committed to Hamilton International. People that come here actually love it. So next slide, and my last slide before I turn it over to my colleague Cole, is just really giving you a snapshot of where Vantage is. And what Vantage is really recognized for is providing the opportunities around the globe and making airports better. Very much focused right now on ESG, the environment, social and governance, dealing with climate change, very much is impacting our business. What that is allowing us to do as being part of the Vantage Global Network is tapping into the airports and our expertise that you can see here on this map around the world. But for us, it's all about people, place, and performance. And what Vantage has brought to the table for us in Hamilton is actually sense of place. And we very much focus everything that we do on that. And we are an airport that's in the middle of a residential community. We're very much concerned and aware of the impacts of an airport on that community. How do we make the community for which we operate in better? How do we commit to having better futures? And how do we integrate our airport operations in a seamless way that allows us to do that and makes Hamilton stand out? The resources that are in Hamilton right now are skilled and have been part of this network for quite some time. Cole had mentioned his tenure here as well. But allowing us to access the professionals that we have around the organization just continues to make Hamilton stronger. But the last thing I want to say before we move on through the rest of the presentation is most airports are known to be monopolies and really much have the marketplace cornered in the areas for which they operate in. Hamilton is very different. We are in a competitive environment here in Hamilton right now. We have become very much known as a simple and easy and friendly airport. We are now catering to those passengers at our leisure. They're visiting family and friends. They're not traveling for business for the most part. And cargo really needs to have a very quick, easy, and efficient way in and out where time matters, minutes matters, it needs to be easy and it needs to be simple. But in this competitive environment that we're in, everybody wants what Hamilton has. And right now, we currently are tasked with making sure that Hamilton is always better and stands out when we look at those that have similar services that are in close proximity to us, including Kitchener-Waterloo, London, in Toronto, we've got Toronto Pearson, we've got Billy Bishop, and then the cross-border situation with the US airports. There's 5 million people that cross the borders in Canada today to hop on air pre-COVID. I'm not sure what those numbers are today. But for us, it creates a new dynamic in the way that we operate and manage the business, and we very much need to make Hamilton International that very easy and friendly and simple operation in order to keep our customers happy. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. So we can move down 2 slides. Oh, just one, sorry, up there. I thought I had a, very good. Yeah, so that's a great segue here. Thank you, Kathy, into our competitive advantages. As Kathy said, the Southern Ontario market for aviation has never been as competitive as it is today. What that means is our stakeholders who operate at Hamilton have choices. They have significant choices to operate from different areas in this market to meet that population base that is the largest in Canada. And that's for both leisure travel as well as the movement of goods. So with that, Hamilton Airport definitely stands apart, and for a couple of reasons. One, Kathy already touched upon the investments made to date since the signing of this lease. Over $422 million in investments from Tradeport, Vantage, and our partners, which further allows our tenants to grow, but it was foreseeing for the future, allowing for the infrastructure to be in place that our tenants need today, as well as allows them to grow into the future. The second aspect of this is really our experienced group of professionals that lead and deliver the day-to-day at the airport. We have a very strong team that not only is focused on that regulatory compliance, but as well as meeting our customer service standards, and that does set us apart as we try to attract new carriers and keep the carriers around that we have. So all of that leads into this slide, and what is it that we offer, and I'll try to give you this visual of what we have at the airport airside before we get into more tours. But one of our key aspects is our runway. Our runway is a 10,000, our main runway, runway 1230, has both ILS and Cat 2 aeronautical guides on it, plus being a 10,000-foot runway, really offers our stakeholders that reliability they need. That runway was rehabilitated in 2019 and 2020 for just over $21 million. It also strengthened that surface. Also, when we look at that, there's only actually 4 commercially usable 10,000-foot runways in Ontario. So us having that in the Southern Ontario market, obviously Pearson has one as well, that really sets us apart for those who want to operate from Hamilton, because 10,000 foot really allows all wide body and narrow body aircraft to operate from the airport. Another item is that we have an uncongested airfield. So a couple items on that. One is just for councillors' knowledge, we have, so of the 2 runways, the second runway, 6,000 foot, actually does have a noise curfew on it. And that is because traffic could go over the city of Hamilton depending on the winds if that runway is used. The curfew on that runway is between 11 p.m. at night to 7 a.m. That traffic cannot go over the city of Hamilton unless it's an emergency. So that's the main curfew there. There's no curfew or restrictions on the 10,000 foot runway. So that means our carriers can be flexible and operate at the times that they need. As Kathy said, minutes matter when it comes to the movements of goods, and specifically for Cargojet, they have a large night presence at the airport, along with a growing morning and afternoon presence. That also being said is we don't have any slots at the airport. So other larger airports require slot restrictions. Carriers are required to book their times in advance and operate within certain times of the day. That is, we currently have a lot of capacity at the airport when it comes to our airfield. And I'll talk about our recent NTCF award that allows us to continue to grow that capacity in different ways. And other aspects, Kathy already touched upon our common use cargo center that's fully in use right now. That was completed in 2015, and really allows our stakeholders, on top of their dedicated facilities, to have access to additional sort facilities, cold storage, and a bonded handling area. Lastly, not all airports have this. Having a 24/7 CBSA service at the airport really allows for our international operations to go smoothly, and that includes both passenger processing for our leisure passengers coming back from international destinations, as well as our cargo operators bringing in goods from European and other international destinations. Next slide, please. So moving on to our passenger facilities. So I think it's, probably most of us in this room have been through the terminal at some point, I would say, but probably at varying different times. So it could be, in the past 20 or so years, there's definitely been different expansions and updates done to the terminal over time. Some of our more recent ones include putting the selfie wall up. That is a big hit with our passengers, but that's, in terms of just paint and signage. When it comes to actually facility expansions over the time period, we've seen our baggage expand, CBSA expand, as well as our hold room expand. So, definitely over time, meeting the needs of our passenger operators to make sure that they have the ability to process passengers in the time they need, to reduce those turn times to get those planes in the air, which is what they need. Our passengers rave about Hamilton Airport. As you can see from the not on this slide actually, is just the 90% satisfaction rate from our customers. Most people who fly from Hamilton are repeat customers. They really enjoy the experience. And we do get people coming from all across Ontario, not just in the Hamilton market, to fly from the airport. Again, pre-pandemic, but have some stats where people travel north and east of Toronto, bypassing Pearson, to come to Hamilton for the experience we offer. We also focus on a local experience. It really matters for a sense of place for us at Vantage to have it at Hamilton. And that can be seen through various different aspects of the improvements we've made, but also in the products we offer. Our concessionaires are local, and specifically our most recent one, Detour YHM, a big hit amongst our patrons. Lastly, with the pandemic, we haven't been able to talk about expansionary items so much in the past couple of years, but we were very happy last year to expand our security screening at the end of the year, and it was operational by January of this year. So we increased from 3 screening lanes to 4 screening lanes, which was a very big deal for our passenger throughput from the airport's perspective. We increased that by 33%, which brought us from being able to process about 360 passengers an hour to just under 500 passengers an hour. So we were really happy to move forward what would be our first deemed expansionary project in a couple of years on that. So very good from the terminal perspective. Okay, great. If we can move on to the next slide, thank you. So one thing I wanted to touch on is when we look at the city's economic priorities, the 6 economic priorities, though we don't necessarily plan our business under these same headings, Vantage and Tradeport definitely impact all of the 6 priorities that the city is striving to meet with their objectives within the 2025, in the 4 or 5 year period here. When you think about our last economic impact survey, the airport itself has an extreme impact on not only Hamilton, but the province and Canada. When we look at the direct jobs that are generated from the airport, over 4,700 direct jobs are as a result of ourselves and our stakeholders. That drove the investment we talked about, and then the economic and GDP value of $1.5 billion that we see from the airport. So very significant when it comes to how Tradeport can impact the city. We also, when it comes to moving goods and people, sometimes it's viewed as us being a small tier airport. Well, really, we've shown that we can grow significantly, being the fastest growing airport in North America in 2019, but as well as the 3rd largest cargo airport in Canada, which is a huge accomplishment for us. So we'll get into a bit more of the passenger and cargo stats a little later on. Lastly, to build this momentum we have now, it came with those investments that were made over these 20 years. But the most recent investment, which is a significant one, is that big yellow building you see when you drive past the airport, and that's the DHL facility. 110 million on airport property, which Kathy said immediately was a plan for a gateway facility and immediately turned into a mini hub for them at the airport, and it has driven a lot of European growth from the airport. Also impacting the airport adjacent to the property, but not on it, is the Amazon facility that was constructed in the past couple of years. That does have an impact on the airport, as Prime Air flights have also increased, operated by Cargojet. But overall, though, that is a ground facility, so only a certain amount of goods do come into the airport. We can move to the next slide, and one more. So getting into how we did in 2022. So this was a real... When we were planning 2022, we really didn't have a good grasp on what could potentially happen because of the pandemic. The year started off with recommended for restrictions in travel again. So that really had an impact on our first 3 or 4 months of the year, which a lot of that is driven by leisure travel down to Caribbean or international destinations. That being said, as our passenger traffic really rebounded from June onwards of that year of 2022, for us to end up at 600 and basically 46,000 enplaned and deplaned passengers. That's a huge accomplishment. And to give you a sense of where we were compared to 2019, where we had just under 1 million passengers, is from that July to December time period, we were operating at just under 90% of those 2019 figures. So really getting back to where we would like to be. A lot of that traffic's driven by Swoop, who's our main passenger carrier at the airport. We'll get into that a little later. But we are excited to announce newer partnerships, which we've done recently, as well as continuing to grow our current partnerships. That being said, from the cargo side of things, we put through another record year. We measure cargo in terms of, it's called MTO. That's our landed billable weight for cargo aircraft. And we were just under 900 million landed kilograms for the year in that grouping. About 88% of that is landed by Cargojet. But Cargojet has great partnerships with all of our partners around the airport and move goods for our other operators, being Purolator Canada Post, UPS, DHL as being the main ones, but as well as Prime Air. When we look at Some of the other good news from the airport is we received 2 global accreditations during the year, one for our health and safety practices, and the other being a phase 1 for our carbon management practices, which we'll get into a little later on as well when we talk about ESG, as well as providing $100,000 in in-kind support to our community partners. Okay, getting down to a passenger operations slide now. So here's a graph where you can see the growth where we started in really 2016 being that ultra low cost carrier incubator in the East Coast. So you can see the growth up into 2019 before the pandemic hit, the impacts of 2020 and 2021. We were actually I'll say one of the luckier airports where it came to the amount of passengers that flow through, and that was because of the partnerships we've made with Swoop and our other carriers, WestJet and Sunwing and Transat, and we're able to see a level of passenger traffic come through that was not necessarily seen at other airports across the country. When we look at us becoming that low-cost incubator, it was very important for the eastern part of Canada for low-cost carriers to choose Hamilton, one, because of the fee structures that we offer and gives them the flexibility they need to offer those low fares, but 2, giving them the times to operate that are not restricted, as most of their flights are required to go out in the early hours of the morning, being 6 to 8 a.m., to make sure that they can recover on their costs throughout a normal travel day. The low-cost market was initially started by New Leaf. If you remember, they were operating from Hamilton in about 2016. That spurred a response from WestJet, who increased their traffic in 2017, to then create what is now Swoop, which began operations in June of 2018. So you can kind of see that progression coming through to then 2019 with Swoop operating a full year. Also from the passenger side, so we talked about this a bit, being, who do we really market to as our airport? And though there is a level of business travel at the airport, that is normally not the major reason. It's normally those leisure traffic and visiting and family friends that drive the traffic from our airport. And you can see that with our low-cost carriers operating a lot of travel throughout Canada. In 2022, we were lucky to announce Lynx Air began operations in June, and then more recently in January, we were able to announce Play Airlines starting in June of this year, in 2023. Play Airlines itself will be flying into Iceland and then offering 26 connection points off of that one flight into different European destinations. So we're really excited about that opportunity. The last European travel we had was with Norwegian in 2019, and they had a level of success, but really nice to get that service back here after the pandemic with Play, and already seeing strong bookings coming through on that flight. Moving on to our cargo operations. So we can see here the trend in growth in cargo MTO. So not only is Hamilton Airport the 3rd largest airport, cargo airport in Canada, and just so you know, the only 2 above us are Toronto Pearson and Vancouver International. When it comes to us as a dedicated, the dedicated freighter business at the airport, we are the largest in overnight dedicated freight, and we are the fastest growing cargo airport in all of Canada. When you look at the 5-year history on Stats Canada, the actual average of payload moved across the country was a decline of 3%, where Hamilton International actually increased by 59% over that same period in time, and the goods moved through the airport. The major goods moved through the airport, it's a variety of goods. It includes just-in-time goods getting to the manufacturing districts around the airport and in surrounding communities. It's e-commerce goods, it's perishables, pharmaceuticals. We did receive the first COVID vaccines into Hamilton Airport that were for the country, and then shipped out from here. So really a variety of goods that move. You see a Lamborghini every once in a while too as well on one of those planes, but definitely a large difference in types of goods in terms of low value to high value goods that can be moved across our country. Cargojet then from Hamilton serves coast to coast. They serve from Vancouver all the way out to St. John's, offering all of our cargo partners the ability to ship goods from this central point to several others across the country. Many of our carriers also connect into here. So DHL and UPS both have significant U.S. operations. They move goods from their facilities in Louisville and Cincinnati up to Hamilton that are then spread out across the country. And DHL recently bringing in a significant amount of traffic from Germany and UK. Those goods are then brought in to their hub and sent out to differing locations across Canada or even back to Cincinnati. So a very strong cargo operation in Hamilton, which is one of the reasons why we were recently awarded new NTCF funding, where I'll get into later on. Onto the next slide, and one more. So just giving you the map here of where we're flying in 2023. You know, a lot of red dots on this map, really, and probably more than you would have thought when looking at those passenger destinations. So really, we offer a robust schedule across Canada, internationally, and now into the European destinations that our passengers really want. And, you know, when we go through our passenger surveys, a lot of the European destinations that our travelers want to go to are actually covered in this new Iceland flight that will fly on to several destinations, like including London, Paris, just to name a couple there. One that's also popular on the Southwest is our Las Vegas flight as well. That's also a very popular one. But you know, our Canadian connections are just incredible, with Lynx furthering their schedule this year to include a connection on into Vancouver through their Calgary route, which is great news for Hamilton International as well. Onto the cargo operation. So this is just our top 25 cargo routes, just to give you an idea of where goods come and go from. By no means is this a full map, because it'd be a little bit too busy if we were to get that going on to here. But one, you can see the North American stops in our top 5. You know, Vancouver, Calgary, a lot of goods get moved out to there. Cincinnati and Louisville, like I said, are the DHL and UPS hubs. And then the European routes that have just been added in the past 2 years with increased in the last 2 years with DHL coming from UK and Germany. So getting into our ESG program a little bit here. What I'll say is ESG has always been embedded in the decisions that we make at Vantage, but in the last year, we've formalized that a little bit more. In 2022, we formalized our 5-year ESG strategy, which will guide us over that time period to deliver on several aspects of our environmental, social, and governance plan. From an environmental standpoint, our main goal as a company is to be carbon neutral by 2029. And I think that's a very ambitious target for us, ahead of other airports and what they're trying to do. And we're right now out for RFP for several decarbonization and energy audits that will help us get to that plan and target. When it comes to other environmental programs, 2 key ones is always, well, I should say one key one is always when it comes to stormwater. And when we were awarded our NTCF award in the beginning of this year, it included an aspect of treating stormwater on site. So we have a new MBBR glycol treatment solution that will be coming on site that will handle a significant amount of on-site treatment that will then divert water from city stormwater processing facilities. So not only is this a win for Hamilton, this is a win for the city when it comes to how we treat stormwater at the airport. In 2022, we had some great accomplishments, one being a big tree planting program that we do, that we'll continue to do each year in Ward 11, and as well some accessibility improvements, with the main one being the Hidden Disability Sunflower Program, which allows those who have hidden disabilities or need a little bit more time getting around the airport to discreetly have a lanyard or pin that will allow them to be recognized at the airport when moving through. Okay. And lastly, you know, somewhat building off of that is building our future together. And right now we're working on a couple of items. The first item I will touch on is the middle pillar there, is our capital investment. The NTCF award that I touched on was a couple years in the making. We applied to the National Trade Corridor Fund under the Building Our Domestic Supply Chain route of it. And from that, we were successful in receiving a $46.9 million project approval for what we're calling the Gateway Expansion and Sustainability Project. The main aspects of this, adding onto the stormwater that I just discussed, is adding apron capacity as well as de-icing capacity. This project will add over 32,000 square meters of pavement to our airport, allowing for up to 5 767 aircraft or 3 777 aircraft to operate at the airport. This 777 traffic currently does occur at the airport, and although infrequently. We are expecting it's on its way. Cargojet has orders in for this aircraft, so we're planning to meet that need. This funding is critical to the airport, as if it was not received, these projects were not planned at the growth rates that we're experiencing right now. So receiving this funding allowed us to advance this project, as well as preserve the low-cost structure that we offer to our stakeholders. Also ongoing right now is a master plan update. So this update will give us a view for the next 20 years right now, and we're making great progress on that. Currently, we've got the aeronautical forecast completed. We've held our stakeholder sessions, which included a 2-day session with our City of Hamilton staff, and then we've gotten through the needs assessment. We also have for our community members a digital portal up where they can check the updates that are being made and provide input on the process, as well as we have an in-person session being planned for May 10th at the airport. Our expected completion is in June of this year, and right now we're at the stage where we're starting to see those images come through of what that land development plan for the airport can look like, as well as where do we need to expand in certain areas of our business to meet the demands of not only today but into the future. And lastly, to the lease term here, I'll pass it back to Kathy.
Thank you, Cole. So really the slide, Building a Vibrant Future Together, it's all about the master plan on what is it that we're going to do and how does that align to what the city wants us to do. How is it that we're going to invest in the airport facilities? What is it that we need to invest in and how are we going to do it? How do we raise the funds and provide the capital that's actually needed for that? And just adding on to the National Trade Corridor Fund, what's important to realize here is the federal government actually has very much acknowledged the City of Hamilton and Hamilton International's role in the movement of goods and supply chain. And with that, the $23 million that it's bringing forward with this current program, as well as another award that we had a few years ago, which was another almost $20 million on that program, is really them acknowledging that the federal government needs to put monies into the Hamilton Airport in order to keep the airport in a very much growth trajectory to meet the needs of the federal government and transportation and goods movement across Canada. When it gets into lease term, what's really important for us is that driving the goals of the business and investing in the facilities that we need to have also is dependent on the term that we have to manage the airport. And it's not unusual for airports to have long-term leases. I mean, our lease originally started in 1995 with a 40-year term with the rights for a 20-year renewal. Currently, right now, those airports in Canada that are still federally owned by the government and managed by airport authorities have 60-year terms with 20-year renewals. And a lot of those agreements that haven't yet expired have already been renewed to give them the longer-term certainty for at least another 40 years from any given point in time, so that you have that certainty not only to do your investment that we need to make on behalf of Tradeport and Vantage Airport Group for the City of Hamilton, but also for our tenants as well, who are looking for long-term leases and occupancies that will last and match the investment terms that they need to make when they're building these buildings, such as the ones that Cole has identified earlier with Mohawk College, DHL, UPS, Cargojet. The buildings that are located at the Hamilton International Airport right now by our tenants, I don't believe there's one, facility of significant value that's actually owned by a passenger airline. They're all cargo, and currently right now the jobs that are created, the 4,700 jobs that the economic impact study identified, over half of those, or more than half of those, are actually directly related to goods movement and supply chain. So very important to have the stability, not only for the operator, but for those also that have chosen Hamilton as home. So Tradeport has been looking forward to finalizing the lease discussions that will, provide that certainty and that extended term, allowing us to continue to do what we do best and what Vantage does best, is managing airports, investing in them, operating them, and then ensuring that at the end of the day, for the city, the region, the municipality, that we are creating the economic impact and value that is a priority for you as well, but it's also about creating jobs and increasing taxation as we are continuing to move those passengers and goods through the network. So I want, on behalf of Cole and Vantage, our board and our shareholders, I want to thank you for the time today. We normally don't go into this much detail, but we thought that was best given there's a lot of new faces around the table. Give you a little bit of the history, and we've only just touched on it. And I know it has been a lot of information. I also know that Cole is very excited to take you all on a tour when the time works out for you, and to really to show you the wonderful and amazing asset that you have in the John C. Munro Hamilton International Airport. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Cole, and thank you, Kathy, for those detailed explanations of how things work at the airport. I see we have a speakers list, and first speaker is Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation today. I thought maybe you can dig into some of the facts and figures in terms of the economic value that the airport brings to us. I did see 1.5 billion. I wonder if you could actually break that down a little bit more.
Yeah, we actually have a press release that was put out last year where it breaks down the cargo aspect to it, the passenger value to it, and then as well the capital investment to it. So I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head right now, but the cargo aspect does play a bigger role into the 1.5 billion compared to the passenger. In terms of ranking, it would be cargo, then passenger, then construction. That impacts that 1.5 billion. And it's the same for the employment levels of the 4,700 as well. So the cargo drives the majority of that, with the passenger operations about 1,200 of those 4,700 jobs, with the capital aspect being at the lower level. So Councillor, I'll be happy to share that press release, just because I don't want to misquote with any of the numbers here, but I'm happy to send that off after this meeting.
And as follow-up questions through you, Chair, to the team, I see that you have a 2023 master plan that's on your website. You're currently looking for indications as to what the passengers are going to be looking for, but perhaps you can give us a quick overview as to what you envision the next 5 years looking like for the airport.
Well, that's a great question. Well, I know what this year looks like, and it's an apron expansion, so that's really good, and looking forward to that. That's one of our largest expansionary projects that we've undertaken since the runway extension back in 1999. So that added capacity is a real win for the airport, a win for the city of Hamilton, because it just allows us to move more goods. We're just such an important part of the supply chain in Canada. When it comes to that vision in the 5-year, basically the short term, moderate and long term, the plans that we see is meeting the demands of our stakeholders. So when the triggers present itself, make sure that we're ready to be flexible, be one step ahead, and adjust the facilities, whether that be buildings or airfield infrastructure, as needed based on their needs. So really, it's all on us. Like I said, being one step ahead of what's coming through the pipeline. These plans will outline how we can improve the terminal, how we can improve the airfield. We are landlocked right now where it comes to where we can develop, so that the important piece for us is making sure that we have service land available for the expansion of the airport, because people are knocking at the door, and we need to make sure that when they come, that we have the land available for them to develop. You see from the size of the Amazon facility, as well as the DHL facility, the amount of land required to do types of sort operations, and it's just very important to have that ready. So I think to answer your question is that we can be very flexible in the type of master plan we have, so that we're always ready to meet the demand.
Through the chair, if I may just add and to build on to that, what's been happening over the last few years is the cargo operators are actually improving and modernizing their fleets. They're also expanding the aircraft into much larger wide-body aircraft. So what's driving the projects that Cole's working on right now is moving away from the smaller aircraft into more 767 and the 777s, which actually are double the capacity of the current aircraft that our main partners are using today. And that just puts a lot of pressure on the airfield when it comes to aprons and where are you actually parking those aircraft. Cargo moves usually overnight, and they sit on the ground during the day as they're waiting for the supply chain to move things by truck. So that's another, factor on how are we connecting the airport to the ground transportation and connectivity, because we're seeing a lot more of transport trucks waiting for those goods as the planes are waiting to be loaded and unloading. And the partners are, needing sort facility capacity to actually process those goods under a roof and inclement weather. When you look at the DHL facility off airport, that's warehousing and fulfillment as opposed to sort. So the goods are just sent there. They might not necessarily use the airport because it could be a truck-to-truck transportation, but it could be air. But how are we actually processing those goods on the airport? The partners want those as close to the airplane or the aircraft as possible, which is why you're seeing the growth of the facilities on airport property by the cargo partners. And then watching what's happening with the airlines when it comes to Hamilton very much being that ultra low cost carrier airport now. The airlines want to be able to give the cheapest ticket as possible. It's not an Air Canada flight where you're paying $1,000 to go one way. They want a $29 or $49 fare. And the only way to do that is by keeping airport costs low as well. So as Cole was saying, how do you build the right infrastructure based on what they want and what they need? And his challenge right now is they love to have everything just on top of each other because then they can utilize their labor in 4-hour shifts. We would love to see it spread out over the whole 24 hours, to be honest, but that doesn't work well for them. So Cole has to deal with these little peaks. They're these banks where everything is on top of each other. And the airlines, as much as we would love them to work closely together, they tend to just piggyback on top of each other. So you've got all the airlines. So the metric that Cole gave of 500, processing 500 people per hour through the screening where you're, divesting your personal belongings to go through those machines is really important because we just need to get them from the parking lot onto the plane. And there's a lot of congestion points there where agencies are involved. It's not even, Cole's team, arriving and departing with immigration and screening. And how do you build the facilities in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money because you're putting that burden on the airlines, but how do you do it in a way that gets the people through easily? And again, with COVID, the challenge is how do you minimize contact? How do you minimize interaction? And how do you distance people? Because there still are people traveling, in masks and that. So it's really interesting, and those are the things that we're watching closely on. What does the new travel experience look like, and how do you invest in the facilities and in your infrastructure to give everybody what they want?
Chair, I have 2 more questions for them. One question is a little more of a drill down in terms of the business model. What I hear, cargo's a large part, passengers, also warehousing, sorting. So what would you say is like, in 100% sort of pie, how big is cargo, how big is passenger, how big is sorting, how big is warehousing, that sort of thing?
Great question. And that actually depends on the year. When we were in the pandemic years, our cargo operation, and we'll put into 3 buckets here: cargo, passenger, and land, like basically land rentals and that kind of the other revenues. The cargo and land, because most of the land rent is actually driven from cargo investment where it comes to those facilities, made up a much larger chunk of the pie as we saw the passenger traffic start to decrease, right, on that one. So they were making at that point about 60 to 70% compared to passenger being at 30 to 40% at that time. In years like 2019, when you have the larger passenger traffic, last year we get a little bit more, that switches back a little bit to be more of the 50-50 between passenger and cargo and land versus then 60/40. So passenger kind of gets a little bit more into that pie compared to the cargo. So cargo is very steady as the business, where passenger has the peaks where you could see a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the carriers operating from the airport.
Chair, my last question to the team is thinking aspirationally, and the fact that we are in the middle of a land lease negotiation, what does the Hamilton Airport look like 50 years from now? In blue sky, blue sky, sort of thinking from your perspective, because I think that council would have a different, like, may or may not have the same or different perspective. So I'd like to really hear from you. What do you think the airport looks like 50 years from now?
Oh, very good question. Would you like to go first on that one? I can go too. I might be around still then, so I don't know. That's
He just said I'm old.
You know, I've grown up in Hamilton, and was always enticed by what this airport could offer. When I started 10 years ago, the passenger traffic was at one of its lowest levels, just because of the time period. It wasn't not that what was going on in the industry was just pushing traffic to other airports, but you knew how great the airport could be. And we're starting to see some of that now. We were so excited heading into 2020 after 2019. With that great momentum we had, there was more flights coming in than 2019 until the pandemic hit. So we've had to regroup after that. But we do feel, we are back on that track while cargo has continued to skyrocket here. So really, I think for myself is, I think the vision here is just to continue growing these important aspects. We're lucky in that not all airports have the diverse revenue that we have here. Most is always dependent on one of those buckets that I mentioned. Never a great rotation of all three, especially for airports that are not as big as a Pearson, more in the lower tier grouping. So, from mine, extending that lease would be a great opportunity to put larger investments into the airport to continue its growth and allowing our stakeholders to grow. I don't have a shiny vision like picture to tell you about, but it's just, I think continued growth is exactly what I would see.
I'm going to build on Cole's answer through the chair to Councillor Wang. Something that we've been working on for a long time, and we've been working on it with the City of Hamilton, is the Airport Employment Growth District lands. And I know when the vision for that, and in the secondary plan when it was first created, I think it was 1,200 hectares. It was reduced to 555 right now. I know a lot of the lands that are currently in that area are in the ownership of developers that are working closely with the City of Hamilton for developments that are complementary to airport use. And I know there was a lot of studies and work that have been done in order to identify the complementary or compatible land uses on all of those lands. And most of that, from my understanding, is around the north, to the northeast and the northwest, all parallel to our main taxiway. My vision and what I can see is there's huge opportunities to connect those operations into the airport. They're adjacent to one of Ontario's and one of Canada's largest runway networks. Why aren't we utilizing it? How do we do these through defense agreements and have these owners be able to develop facilities that take advantage of the ability to land aircraft that can actually utilize the facilities that are built there? Cole had mentioned us, being landlocked. We're actually out of land within the perimeter of the airport boundary today. I think we've got 2 lots right now that can be built on. They're odd shaped, they're difficult, they're in demand, and we're not able to maximize the best use of that. Another, example is the Amazon fulfillment facility that's just off airport. It's sitting in between the V of our two main runways. It's not connected to the airfield. So goods are moving around the road system to get over to that facility if they are landing by air. Why is it not connected? Now, again, these are my questions, my thoughts, but going back to the AEGD, what is the timing of the development? What is the city's, planning on servicing that land? And there's also land to the west and then down to the south. And the east is in the hands of developers and the north is, but what is happening with the rest of that? So looking at how do we develop that out, and how do we develop it all out with the vision that we all had? And when you look at the compatible land use, some of this was prestige, it was business parks. It is, what are the services that need to be close by an airport that actually support not even the movement of goods and people, but the employees and the people that are working there? You know, is it, what type of facilities do you need when it comes to medical and professional and daycare and all of those things that are going to attract people to want to be near the airport? There's, I think, 4 subdivisions that are going up right now in the close proximity of the airport, and I'm not sure how many people that means when it comes to residents living into the community, but do they have everything that they need as well? So do the workers have what they need? Do the residents have what they need? And how are we attracting the right things to the airport? There's been a common word used for decades now, aerotropolis, and it's all about that ecosystem of an airport and all of the compatible uses for business and industry that need to be close by to make it all work and to make it all work seamlessly. One of the biggest wins that we had recently as well was when the provincial government announced, I think 18 months ago, that it was going to widen Highway 6. Because what we're hearing is the road connectivity to the airport needs to be better than it is today to align with the growth targets that our business partners have. You know, when you look at what DHL, Cargojet, UPS, Mohawk College, they need people to get to the airport, not only to work, but for the people to fly and for the goods as well. And what we've heard is a 2-lane highway that's not lit without shoulders, that is only one way in each direction in southern Ontario in the winter, is not ideal for the movement of 53-foot transport trucks. So again, envisioning what it might be, and I hope it's not 50 years, we need it to be sooner than 50 years, but how do we improve that road connection? How do we make sure that we're on all levels of government when it comes to making sure that all the priorities are aligned? And from Cole's perspective is, how do we get more people near the airport to enable the entire ecosystem to work as best as it can?
Thank you, CEO. That actually generated a whole lot more questions. So can you put me on the speakers list for a second time? Thank you.
Next councillor with questions is Councillor T. McMeekin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm still waiting for my Lamborghini. Thanks to both of you, Cole and Kathy, for the upgrade. Yeah, how do you turn it on? Wow. You see, I'm not a high-tech guy, but I'm learning. I have watched the airport gem shine brighter and brighter and brighter through the years. My last airport committee meeting, I think, was in 1977 or maybe 78. And it was, to be frank, a pretty Mickey Mouse operation. And I'm not talking Orlando here. It was pretty raw, and was there to help stick handle the transition to Tradeport, which was one of the best decisions the city ever made, was to enable that to happen. And I guess most recently around discussions around the runway extensions, when the two governments came together to boost that. So the airport is, I do have some questions, but I want to do a little preamble just to kind of contextualize what I'm saying. Is one of 2 gems in the city that we haven't always recognized deservedly as, or not deservedly as we should. One's the harbor, and that has changed, thinking of the transition to the rural shipping out of the harbor in terms of the $2 billion plus agri-food industry, and I'm sure that's part of your cargo targets as well. And then of course the airport. I'm wondering what we need to do to clear the runway for future investment. I don't know how the negotiations with the city are going, or if they're happening, how fast. But my sense is if I was a major company wanting to invest millions of dollars, I'd want to have a long-term lease for sure. Who wants to make the kinds of investments that are going to be required unless and until that assurance is provided? So I guess that leads me to my first question. How are the negotiations going from the airport's perspective, and what might we be able to do to help move those along?
Okay. Through the chair, I am happy to say we have a meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks where Vantage, the shareholder, myself, our very active chair, Ron Foxcroft, will be meeting with staff and with the mayor, and we're confident that discussions that have been underway for quite some time will continue to move in the right direction. And we're, with the council direction, I think a year ago, we're working towards completion of the master plan, and there's a lot of things that are moving ahead, and we're confident and we're optimistic that we can get this thing done.
That's great to hear. I mean, 40-year lease normally would be sufficient for most businesses, but my hunch is that's not the case in this particular line of work. And so I'm pleased to hear that. Aside, so my second question, and thank you, we're all making notes on that, and it's good to see that's happening. I know there's been some concern about the speed of that happening, so it's good to hear that in 2 weeks it's another launching point. I guess my only second question, and Cole, you get to stand on the shoulders of the giants, right, in your work, and I get to stand on the shoulders of Tammy Wang, who always asks good questions. And so the only other thing that is a very generic question is, aside from the lease, which is paramount, absolutely paramount, and needs to benefit both parties, let that be noted for the record, right? More substantively than is currently the case, I would risk venturing to say. Aside from the lease, what else are you needing or wanting from the city?
I think the major, I'm good here. I think the first big item was something we touched on before, is just that land aspect around the airport. And, we're talking about this in our monthly meetings, and, how to get access to that land, making sure it's serviced in time for our stakeholders to be able to develop. There's a lot of land in the possession from private investors around the airport, but then as well, both from the city's perspective and trade ports, there's also investments that have been made by both parties to ensure there's some future growth as well. So ensuring servicing to those lands so that the growth can occur is very important from our end.
As there's been somewhat controversial over the last couple of decades, Airtropolis, and especially from the ecosystem perspective that you were saying was so important. So I hope we can make some progress on that. That's important. If we're going to build out, it's best we do it in ways that have a secondary benefit to not just the people who need daycare and roads, but also the overall economy and in support of the airport. So that's a tricky one. Jason, isn't it? It's. I see you're hiding in the back there, which is probably smart. In any event, I'll stop there. I'm really pleased you're here, and I'm tickled to have the unusual privilege of now being connected, at least peripherally, for 5 decades with the airport. I'm proud of what we've done as a city. We need to be declaring that over and over again, because, I read a thing in the newspaper last week about the schmozzle at Toronto around security.
Councillor,
Yep.
your time is waning.
One last sentence, but an important one. The article concluded with the question, why can't Pearson be run as well as the Hamilton Airport? I think that speaks an awful lot about the progress that we made together. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. You're such a tolerant guy.
Thank you for your comments. And we're going to the next question from Councillor Kassar.
Thanks, Chair Taddison, through you. First question is just around growth, and you talked about the requisites for growth and all the things that need to happen. And of course, you'll be aware of the forced urban boundary expansions that the city has forced upon us. And you talked about the no curfew status of the 1230 runway because it doesn't come over the city of Hamilton. So I'm wondering if you have a perspective on the fact with the boundary growing, what impact that would have on the curfew status, and do you have any concerns, or is this a non-issue?
You know, for runway 1230, no concerns on the status of that curfew. What I'll say is actually the residents around the airport provide minimal noise inquiries into the airport. Those in the community of Mount Hope, Bimbrook, Ancaster, our noise inquiries on an annual basis are very immaterial to, you know, just receiving tens to maybe up to 100 in a year compared to other airports that receive tens of thousands of noise inquiries. So when it comes to the actual restrictions, you know, potentially changing at certain points, no concern on our end. Our operators not only are upgrading their fleet to basically improve the sound efficiencies from their aircraft, but the way our noise contours are around the airport ensures that developments that occur are outside of an area that would have impactful noise to them. So.
Yeah, from what I understood through the chair is that some of the Greenbelt expansion lands are within noise contour lands that would have an impact. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, the noise contours though are there to protect, and so, you know, when it comes to whether it's in, I'll just use some technical terms, NEF 30, NEF 28, NEF 25, we would still follow our guidelines as to what would be allowable in those different ranges of NEF. We wouldn't change our opinion of that. When it comes to it. Now, could the NEFs potentially change depending on runway configurations? Yes, definitely.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that. Second question, I wanted to hear more about your plan to be carbon neutral in 2029. If you could just elaborate on that, and then is it scope 1, 2, or 3 emissions that you're working on?
Yeah, well, that's a big being, you know, we're an airport, obviously, and when it comes to the aircraft, we know our partners are working very heavily on sustainable aviation fuels and other options for aircraft. When it comes to the airport specifically and our facilities, we're really in the infancy stages of getting that decarbonization plan together to then pick those items off the menu of what we think are most impactful on how we can reduce our emissions from the airport. So when we're looking at that, the real big first step here is we've got an RFP out that has over 30 companies looking to bid on it to help us build that plan. And what I can tell you is that Vantage is very much in support of what we're doing here. And even though our goal is 2029, we're looking to expedite that as much as possible. The actual plans on how that can occur can happen through various different means. Our major usage is at our terminal building for natural gas, and then when it comes to electricity, that's one of them, as well as our airfield. So looking at those key aspects of the business and how we can reduce usage or change the way we operate a bit to be that carbon neutral is important to us, and that could be through various different means at the airport.
Okay, thanks for that. So I would take away from that you're talking about scope 1 emissions.
Oh, sorry, yes, I didn't, yes, correct.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's all the questions I have.
Second time speaker, Councillor Wayne.
Alrighty, okay. I wanted to understand, do you have a private charter business? Because in the news, we hear Justin Bieber and Drake show up at our airport. So are we making any money off of something like that?
So the airport offers 2 FBOs. 3 FBOs at the moment where private charters can operate from that. So it is a part of our business. We call that general aviation because it's not operating outside at the terminal building. But definitely there is a big contingent of individuals who would rather choose Hamilton for that traffic than Toronto. One bigger airplane is the Drake aircraft that we know of, and that is parked at our airport as well, but only meant for use by one person, I think, so.
I sincerely hope that Drake Chair is actually paying us a lot to be parking his giant aircraft for the one person. I wanted to also riff on something that CEO Puckering kind of alluded to, which was adjacent businesses that are in and around the airport. I know that part of our AEGD, we do talk about a lot of different businesses, but these businesses tend to be very large footprint with very few jobs. So if we think about warehousing, for example, they take up a significant footprint, but you don't necessarily need to put, Amazon might be a completely different beast in itself, but you don't necessarily need to put a ton of people to warehouse. So when you are envisioning what are some of the adjacent businesses, I think for a while we were talking about data centers because, again, large footprint, large energy, significant energy uptime, few people. How does that factor into your your master planning and your growth?
Great question. About 2 years ago, we actually updated our land optimization plan. And what that does is it looks at, all the lands that are, on airport and off airport and what would be the best use of those lands. And definitely, those that are closer to the airport, you want to make sure that there's some type of involvement with the aircraft. And then as you get further away from the airport and further away, what are you looking at as a type of business that we would prefer and recommend and suggest, through our master planning process, that's the best use of those lands. I definitely agree with you because a very good example is a storage facility that's located at the northeast corner of off-airport property that has nobody working at it. And that's, is warehousing and storage sort of got fit into the zoning on that, but there is no job creation and there's no value to the airport. So how do we influence the decisions that are made? And we do that, in collaboration with the city through the partnerships with staff. And we comment, on the applications as they're coming through. They do cross our desks so that we can comment back on what is the best use. But today, what we've identified in the lands that are currently not zoned for development, there's in the urban boundary, for future uses, they would be complementary to the airport. So what you would look at as close as possible, but off airport would be facilities that are providing support to the airport terminals, such as off-airport kitchens. At what point or where would you put a hotel or additional off-airport for food and beverage? Do your car rentals need to be on airport property, or are they, half a kilometer away? Like, where do you put those type of operations? And then when it comes to the cargo and goods movement and fulfillment, you do need to have the fulfillment and the warehousing in close proximity. It doesn't need to be on airport, but it does need to be close enough. And what we have to balance is the amount of time that vehicles are moving on the ground as well, back and forth, because you want to limit that and limit that footprint because of the impact that it does have on climate. And again, that's, something that we're looking at going forward too, as well as on our ESG and our climate change and the industry as a whole. What are we doing as the part of the aviation and transportation sector to be reducing that footprint in order to keep air transportation, viable going into the future, and really much focusing on that.
Thank you, Chair. Those are all my questions.
Councillor Wayne, could you take the chair for a moment, the co-chair?
Absolutely.
Could you comment on if there's been any significant benefits of having full-time city transit to the airport?
Yeah, definitely on that. And I know, we work in close conjunction with HSR and city staff when we have items that come up. Most recently, the schedule has been increased for a good chunk of the day, though not not, I don't believe 24 hours at the moment, but a good chunk of the day it's being served at 15-minute increments. So with that, we have a very unique base of employees at the airport that operate the majority of the day. With the recent improvements, we see some great usage coming out of that, and as well as the Mohawk facility at the southwest corner, which we're also seeing some increase in activity as well. So, all I'll say is we work closely with the HSR if we see something come up that we need to adjust, but definitely responsive when that happens. So we're seeing some good service at the moment.
If I can just add and build on that through the chair, what we've also been seeing, and I talked a bit about the need for road transportation and highways and working with the province, and I know this goes beyond the municipality, but what we're seeing with the emergence of the ultra low cost carriers and the demographic of those that are traveling on that is there's huge demands on Cole and his team right now on connecting Hamilton into Toronto and Niagara. And I know this goes beyond what the City of Hamilton and the HSR will do, but it's critically important today and going forward, and as part of our 50-year vision as well, is how do you provide those seamless, quick connections that enable people to not only come into Hamilton, but when they're leaving Hamilton. What stats are showing right now is 60% of the passengers that travel through Hamilton aren't from Hamilton, and they're likely leaving the market. And where are they going, and how do we get them there, and how do we keep them here? But it's very much a priority to ensure that ground transportation is as frequent as it can be within Hamilton and beyond those boundaries as well.
Further question regarding, I'm going to just not say this correctly, but perfluoroalkylides and octanes, the PFOs, PFAs. Will that stormwater management system that's on, will that help with that potential leaching to the surrounding waterways?
Yeah, so, PFAS, PFOAs and that, the actual, what we're dealing with the stormwater treatment is minimal amounts of glycol residual that's left after aircraft de-ices. So that's what this stormwater the management system will handle. Right now, how we process that water, it actually goes through the city system. And we store it, gets to a certain level. We have permits in place where the city, through us paying certain amounts, we'll get that processed. This will allow a good chunk of that water to be serviced and cleaned on site to then be allowed to go to local creeks. When it comes to PFAS and PFOA, we deal with that in a different, as a different item, and have different aspects in place with the MECP to handle that.
No more questions. I'll take the chair. Oh, first time speaker, Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for the incredible presentation there. I had the good privilege of flying out of Hamilton Airport shortly after the election to disappear somewhere after take some badly needed rest, and I hadn't been at the airport in some time, and flew into Charlottetown and then flew back. And Charlottetown's another smaller regional airport. And I had always in my mind had us at parity with some of those smaller airports. And when I flew back into Hamilton, I said, wow, this isn't the same airport that I remember. And as I said, it's been a while. So congrats to all the work that's been done there. And you can really see how the airport has been elevated in many, many ways. There you go. Thank you for the pun. Just wanted to build on the conversation and some of the questions around transit. And I feel like maybe there was some hidden meaning to some of the conversation there that we were having just a second ago on transit in terms of connections to the greater GTHA area. Is there talks, or is there some rumblings of something happening with regional transport, GO Metrolinx, GO buses, anything like that, number one? And is there an ability this governing body to advocate on behalf of what the needs of the airport may be, because I'm a big believer in connectivity to regional transport, and just wondering how that might play into your future plans or current plans.
And just to clarify that first, just when you say rumblings of increasing service, is that types of what you're getting at?
No, I think just a moment ago, Councillor Tattison was asking questions about connection points, and you were talking about, I think Kathy was talking about 60% of your passenger traffic is not from the Hamilton area, and many of them are flying into Hamilton and going elsewhere. And an HSR connection is great if you're staying in Hamilton, that's the 40%. But if 60% of traffic is going outside the city limits, HSR connections are not going to be as effective or helpful for what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm just wondering, in terms of regional connectivity, is there a role that you see that we could assist in some way in advocation, or are there plans that you might be able to highlight that would be helpful for us to know?
I'll start off, as I'm sure Kathy will probably add on a little bit to this one too as well. We recently awarded a coach bus contract to a provider who will provide us service directly from the airport to downtown Toronto on a daily basis. It'll be in line with our afternoon flight times to get more people through that. Moving between that corridor. HSR also offers the connection through to the GO train station at the Harbour GO train station there. So there are connectivity connections to the core through that at the moment. The other percentage of passengers, we do see a large contingent who do like to drive to the airport and park, get dropped off, or use rideshare or taxi services. So that is also a big contingent of what operates at the airport. Where it comes to the gap, we have worked with in discussions with Metrolinx in the past on what could be at the airport. But further alluding to some of the comments that Kathy made, the peakiness of the operation from our passenger perspective also plays into effect on that. And knowing that there's only a couple. There's several lulls in the facility throughout the day, as opposed to some of the peakier moments. It's not necessarily a great spot to have consistent GO train or GO bus service, let's just say, back and forth to different locations, whether that's Harbour or Burlington GO train station. So we're happy that the coach bus is starting up. It'll start up in June. It's already ready to book right now online, and we're looking forward to seeing that service and if it can be successful.
Yeah. If I can just add to that as well, through the chair, the HSR service over the past 5 years has been much improved from what it was, and I want to thank the city for that. Dina Carlucci, who's on our team, engages regularly with, and I forget the person's name at the city, just tracking the data and monitoring it, and building off of what Cole said. It's our airlines are still adding new flights and adding new routes and the timing, and it's inconsistent, but what we need to do is keep watching it, and we need to be ready for when we do need to have the expansions. And in the short term, there's just different solutions that actually will work as we, monitor what the future actually will envision for that connection. And the other challenge is on the peakiness. We've got passengers, but we've also got the labor. And then we've got the students. So the students that are coming to Mohawk College, it's how are we connecting those other areas of the city of Hamilton where they reside to that trek up to the city. And it isn't something that can be done every hour, every half hour. So it's a little bit ad hoc right now, but we'll continue to watch it and monitor it. What had been helpful in the past with this committee as well is the cadence of our meetings and having them more frequently, and COVID has gotten in the way of that. So what we would love to be able to do going forward is have some relevant content that we can share with you that's relative to the meeting and to the engagement, and things like this can be discussed. How is the public transit? What are we doing on our climate change initiatives and activities? What are we doing to grow the airport? And just giving you regular updates that you want to hear, and having that, that good, robust, frequent conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is the only time I've heard the term peakiness. used frequently in a meeting, and thank you for bringing new lexicon to the table. I was, and a number of us sit on another subcommittee, and we recently heard a report back from Economic Development on the impact of the agriculture industry. And I know that some forms of agriculture rely on air freight, and I don't know what transpires at the terminal. Floriculture, for example, there's the importation of cut flowers and whatnot that are brought in from places in South America. Kenya is a major producer of some of these agricultural products. I've heard that Hamilton is somewhat of an emerging hub in the distribution of East Coast oysters coming into the airport. I'm wondering if there's something you might be able to tease out and highlight a little bit on how the airport may play a role in the current agricultural sector and how you may see that emerging into the future.
Starting off the answer to that, I think one of the important factors is, are we ready to handle that type of traffic? And the answer is yes. The infrastructure invested into with the Common Use Cargo Center back in 2015 allowed us to have that general use sort facility available that has is a bonded facility, but as well has a cooler in it that allows some of these goods, depending on what the temperatures they need to be stored at, to be processed. That, along with the robust flight network that Cargojet offers throughout the globe, really sets us up well to handle these types of goods. These types of goods they've moved through the airport and continue to do so. When it comes to opportunities, the most recent one we're working on is how can we start getting additional fish in from as part of this Iceland route? Is there an opportunity to start receiving an additional fish through belly cargo on that one? So it's a consistent growth curve there where we're lucky enough that we've made the investments to be ready to handle these goods.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear, and I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, may I please have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation? Councillor Wang, Councillor Kassar. Please indicate your vote now. That vote carries 5-0. Thank you, councillors, for your good questions. We're going to move to 10. Discussion items. 10.1, John C. Munro Hamilton International Airport, City of Hamilton Joint Marketing Incentives, PED 23121, citywide. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the item 10.1 on the floor? Councillor Wang, Councillor McMeekin. Is there any discussion on this report? Seeing none? Oh, sorry. Councillor Kassar.
Yeah, just one question around the marketing dollars spent, and just how is the ROI on that measured? And what ways are used to measure?
Very difficultly. It's not easy on that. One of the aspects is part of our passenger surveys. We try to get information to see if there was forms of advertisement that impacted how individuals booked their trips. What I can say is our advertising is very targeted towards the markets that we believe will be flying in and out of the airport, and specific not only to the type of traveler, but to where they're going and the types of vacations they're looking for. So with that is we do no, there is an impact to that. To calculate an exact ROI on that, we don't have that number, but just through our surveys and then the amount of hits and that type of information we get back from our digital campaigns, we know there is an impact to that on people's booking behaviors.
Okay, thanks for the answer. That's all.
Another question from Councillor Wang.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just to our economic development team, how are we refreshing this reserve? Because I do see that it is coming out of our ECDEV reserves.
Through Chair and Councillor, we actually get a percentage
percent back from the airport every year from the rent. So 25% of that rent actually goes into that reserve. Kirk, I'm not sure if you want to elaborate on that in terms of how that operates from a financial perspective, but I'm not sure if there's anything more than that.
Through the chair, that Norm has covered it well. 25% of our annual rent from the airport is put into that reserve, and then these reports come forward once joint marketing initiatives have been determined on an annual basis.
No more questions? We will require an electronic vote to approve the recommendations. That vote was carried 5-0. Motions? Seeing none, let's move to 12. Notices of motions. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, we'll move to general information and other business. None. I better turn the right page here. Here we go, we're moving. Item 14, private and confidential. May I have a mover and seconder to move into closed session? Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Beattie. Shall I read this? Oh, I better put my glasses on. Pursuant to Section 9.3, subsection C, J, and K of the city's procedural bylaw 21021 as amended, and Section 2392, subsection C, J, and K of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for city or local board purpose, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the city or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the city or local board. We will require an electronic vote. Please indicate your vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you to our delegates today. See you later.
Sue's leaving.
And that vote carried 5-0. We are going into closed session. Members of the public are advised that during the closed session of the portion, the live stream broadcast, a closed session in progress screen will appear. The broadcast will resume when the closed session portion of the meeting is complete. As we are now moving to closed session, I would ask all members of the public, delegates, and external participants to please now exit the WebEx meeting. As well, any staff that are not directly related to the in-camera item are now asked to please exit the WebEx meeting.
We'll just need a few minutes to get ready.
Thank you. Reminder for all to switch back to open in their eScribe. We're almost there.
Almost there.
Almost there.
This is a doozy of a session.
Welcome back to those viewing on live. We are now in open session. 14.1 Airport Lease Status Update, PED 19084G, citywide. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the following? The report PED 19084G and Appendix A to report PED 19084G respecting airport lease status update be received and remain confidential. We will require an electronic vote. Please indicate your vote now. Oh.
I'll move.
Thank you. Councillor Wang and Councillor Beatty, thank you for moving that. We will go to an electronic vote. That vote was carried. May I please have a mover and seconder to adjourn? Councillor Beatty and Councillor McMeekin. We will have an electronic vote to adjourn. Please indicate your vote when it appears. That vote was carried. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you to all staff.